Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this morning's workshop information session on untold stories and building stronger communities. I'm Steve Smith. I'm the Funding and Development Officer at Community Links Bromley. And I'm very pleased to welcome Amanda and Anne from the GLA, who are going to talk us through the process for the second rounds of these particular funds. So without further ado, I'd like them to introduce themselves, and perhaps if we can just have a few words from, if we can then just have a few words from each of the people on the call, just so we know who you are and where you're from, and maybe just a couple of words about what you're doing and how you think this might assist you. So over to you, Amanda and Anne.
I'll unmute myself. Hi, I'll introduce myself first. Amanda Lamb at GLA, obviously. I work in civil society and sports team or unit. I'm Policy and Programmes Officer for Community Funding, so it fits well with this programme. Yeah, hand you over to Anne.
Morning, my name's Anne Hartley. I work in the Culture and Creative Industries unit here at the Greater London Authority, and so it's my role to kind of oversee Untold Stories, which are the grants for the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm.
Okay, lovely, thank you very much. Maybe if we just go around very quickly just to see who's on the call. I can see on my screen I've got Pearl. Jarrett, do you want to just say a few words about who you are and where you are and what you're doing, just in a couple of sentences?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Pearl. Hi, Steve.
Hi there.
We know each other via the foundation, via the youth mentoring that I do. But one of the other arms that I do is JF Arts, which is musical theatre, and specifically gospel musical theatre. And I would really love to see more of that in public spaces. So I wanted to hear what was going on today.
Thank you very much, Pearl. We've got Audrey. Would you like to say a few words, Audrey?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm Audrey Gray. I'm helping Pearl with her project, but I also am the CEO of the Gospel Music Industry Alliance. And so we're looking at educational gospel music programs that can potentially go into schools, universities and the like, and also into the greater community, sort of discovering stories that way. Yeah, so I'm just tuning in to find out where there's scope. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. And Philomena, are you with us?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Philomena. I'm from Asian Community Concern, and it's a voluntary organization, and I'm a social entrepreneur. I work for women empowerment, and but we're based in Southall, Ealing Borough, and I just came to joining to know what's going on in community and to learn more about the people working in it. And the project at present which I'm working is for digital inclusion for elderly people and health awareness among Asian women, especially with breast cancer awareness, which is people don't talk about more, and domestic abuse. So it's just the awareness part which I bring it to them and bring them out of that circle, especially when I'm talking about domestic abuse, so that they know, and if they agree that they want to come out of their present situation, I link them to a bigger organization where they can get appropriate help and they can move on with their life. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Philomena. Thank you all. Okay, that's good to hear whereabouts what you're doing and what you're hoping to get out of this morning. Over to you, Amanda and Anne, if you'd like to. I'm allowed multiple screen sharing, so you should be able to show your slides.
Okay, I'm gonna try and do that. Oh, is that a bit hard? Yeah, can everybody see that properly? Great.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so yes, Amanda and I are here to talk about 2 funding programmes that are currently open for their second round from the Greater London Authority. The first one we're going to talk to you about today is Untold Stories, which is grants by the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm. And then we're going to talk to you also about the Building Strong Communities Fund that really sits under the sort of Building Strong Communities recovery mission. Both funds are really aimed at smaller grassroots organisations that are really community-led. So that's why we've sort of come together to join forces for a presentation to explain both the funds, because they do different things but sort of reaching similar people. So just to sort of point out the deadlines from the get-go is Untold Stories deadline is the 5th of October and Building Strong Communities Fund is the 8th of August. So first of all, just a quick talk about the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm and kind of a background to the project. It is one of the Mayor's flagship commitments to cementing London's reputation as a diverse global city. It was announced in 2020, but actually a lot of the work had already started. Particularly noticeable was the Millicent Fawcett statue in Parliament Square that was unveiled in 2018. And that was the first statue of a woman and by a woman to be sited in Parliament Square. Then the summer of 2020 brought a lot of these questions into a much sharper focus for the Mayor of London with the Black Lives Matter uprisings and particularly the topping of the Edward Colston statue in Bristol, which really sort of prompted people to ask questions around who is and who is not represented within London's public spaces. So our work is supported by 14 commission members who were recruited. It's supported by a partners board and borough working group. Particularly, it's important to have the borough working group because a lot of the decisions around the public realm are not made by the Mayor of London, they're made by individual boroughs. Also supporting our work was an Art UK report that, amongst other findings into sort of statues and monuments in London, found that there are more statues of animals than there are of named women in London. And so that's sort of some of the evidence that we know that there are certain groups that are really missing from the public realm. We also did some community consultation and people told us they wanted to be able to make their own decisions about their public realm. They wanted to celebrate everyday Londoners and they wanted us to think about addressing systemic inequalities to accessing funding and making decisions about the public realm. And so one of the ways we're doing that is through Untold Stories, which is a £1 million funding programme that really aims to fund community-led projects that create new objects that increase diversity and representation in London's public spaces. And that could be things like murals and artworks, but also plaques, play areas, fountains, benches, that sort of thing. And then we'll also support projects that provide context, insight, or draw attention to invisible, contested, or missing diverse heritage in London's public spaces. And that is things like walking tours, digital trails, augmented reality projects, anything that sort of highlights what is there, what is invisible, and provides a fuller story to actually all the people that have made London great. As I say, the deadline's the 5th of October. Decisions on your grant application should be around sort of end of January, beginning of February 2023, which means projects can start in March 2023 and must be complete by March 2024. We awarded just over 500,000 in the first round, so we have just under 500,000 for this second round. So talking about eligibility, organisations, so to apply you must be a constituted community group or not-for-profit organisation. You must be based anywhere in Greater London and have a turnover of less than £500,000 per year. And actually we're really interested in supporting organisations that have a turnover of much less than £500,000 a year. And I think in round one, about 60% of the funded organisations had a turnover of less than £50,000 a year. So quite small organisations. If you are an unconstituted community or mutual aid group, you must work with a constituted sponsor organisation to support your application. So that's a constituted organisation who can write you a letter of support, can sign the funding agreement on your behalf, and ring fence the funds in your account, in their account to spend specifically on that project. And then priority for funding will go to organisations or groups that are majority led by Black, Asian and minority ethnic Londoners, deaf and disabled Londoners, LGBTQ+ Londoners, women or people from a lower socioeconomic background. And that's because we know that is what is really missing within London's public spaces. So there are two levels of funding available for Untold Stories. The first is our small grants, which are called Test and Nurture grants. And these, I think, are really for organisations where you've got an idea, but you need a bit of resource or funding to develop that idea into something that could be a full project. So it's kind of sort of research and development funding, an opportunity to test new ideas, run a small scale project or develop a project. And so there's up to £5,000 available. You don't need any other partnership funding required. You just need a really great idea that's going to increase representation in London's public spaces and a sense of what you need to do to get where you're going. So this could support things like community consultations or workshops. Perhaps you want to work with an artist, a local heritage organisation to develop ideas for a new community project. Or you might want to test out ideas and consult with your community about what project you might deliver. Then we have the larger grants, which are our Grow and Make Happen grants, and you can apply for £5,000 to £25,000 at this level of funding. And this strand is for projects that are a bit more of an advanced stage of planning. You might have tested an idea on the small scale. You could have been planning it for ages. You just need a bit of funding to get it off the ground and make it happen. It could be something that is completely new, or it's something that's working well and needs funding to continue or grow it. Again, no partnership funding is required for this fund, but we encourage you to think about where else you might get other income from, particularly support in kind. And support in kind is always a really useful thing to show us in a funding application, as it shows that there's a lot of people that are really willing to make this project happen, even if they can't put in financial resource into it. So projects at this level could include making and installing new objects in the public realm, developing and delivering tours or trails that highlight missing or hidden diverse heritage, or perhaps a new digital or augmented reality project within the public space. I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea of some of the projects that we funded in round one, as I think they can bring it up to life much better than I can. So first of all, at the smaller level, we funded the Club Carly network for their Pink Hub project, which is a project that is recording and collecting and working out how to publicly display stories from London's LGBTQ+ community, but particularly those people from South or Southeast Asian background. Then we funded the Vanbrugh Estate Tenants and Residents Association for the lost story of Emily Wilding Davidson's Blackheath. The suffragette Emily Davidson was born on the site of the estate, but because the house she was born in is no longer there, they can't put a blue plaque up. But they do want to celebrate her connection with Blackheath and with the estate. So they're doing a bit of research and development to work out how they can best memorialise Emily Davidson within their estate. And then the 492 Corner Club are developing and consulting on a mural that will celebrate the Brixton sound system scene, but particularly the female pioneers within the Brixton sound system scene. So then for the Grow and Make Happen grants, we have funded Shabad Lubavitch of Islington to do a Jewish heritage trail where they will install sort of physical artworks and markers in certain areas around Islington that are really linked to Jewish heritage and history within the area. We have funded Pepys Community Forum and the Deptford Community Monument Project, which really explores Deptford Docks and its connection to the transatlantic slave trade, working with local schools to do a digital trail, and again installing sort of physical artworks that people can go on a trail around. And the idea is that it will tell more of the fuller story of the areas linked to the transatlantic slave trade, but also celebrate the resilience and contributions that those communities have made to that area of London. And finally, we funded the London LGBT Forums Network to develop their Rainbow Plaque programme. They've installed 2 rainbow plaques already in London, one at Clapham Common Station, which was the site, which is where Oscar Wilde passed through on his way to Reading, being sent to Reading Jail, and another plaque that's outside where My Beautiful Laundrette was filmed. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of projects that we have supported. Then quickly, just to talk a little bit about how we will make a decision about any applications that we receive. So your application will be assessed by GLA officers who will look at 4 criteria for assessment. The first being the story and vision. So what you want to do and why. What story is it that you want to tell through this project, and why is it important to your community? Also tell us how you're involving experts, so perhaps artists, historians, heritage experts, and people with lived experience of the issues that you're addressing within your project. Then we'll look at diversity and inclusion. So really, how are people invited to take part, and how have you involved your community in designing this project? And I think Amanda will probably talk about this as well for building strong communities, but that's one of the key things for both the funds, is that actually the people that are going to be affected or be part of this project have really had a say in shaping how the project has been developed and will continue to develop. We'll also look at how well you're making this project accessible to deaf and disabled people. Then we look at making it happen. So this is sort of the practical elements of the project, whether your organisation has the skills and experience to deliver a project of this nature, or whether you're working with partners and contractors who have those skills and experience. We'll look at the project plan and whether that looks like it's sort of set out to achieve what you want it to. And then we'll look at the budget to make sure that everything you've said in sort of the narrative bit of your application is represented in the budget, and that the costs look realistic and the project looks doable. Then finally, we'll look at how well it meets the aims of Untold Stories and the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm. Then the final decision is made by a panel who sort of have to put together a little bit of a jigsaw in terms of funding. And so they will be looking to support activity across London. So in a number of different boroughs. We want to be supporting a range of different beneficiaries and people with and communities. So we'll be looking for a balance there. And then also a range of types of activities. So we're not just going to fund murals, we want to be making sure that we've got that kind of fuller picture within the public realm. So I think that is Untold Stories. And I can pause there if there are any burning questions on that fund. I'll stop sharing for a second.
Thank you, Anne. That's really, really helpful. Can I just, while people are thinking about any questions they might have, can I ask one about the people who can bring the ideas together? Do they need to be from one of the groups that you've mentioned? I know that we had the Civil Society Roots program fairly recently, and I think that some groups struggled with the 75% had to be either staff or trustees from a particular group. And I think sometimes, although they were delivering the service, the activities were going to be for a particular community, sometimes the makeup, the board makeup didn't always reflect that, and they found that a real struggle. So I just wonder whether this same type of thing might happen here, or is there more flexibility?
I think we'll probably talk about this with building strong communities as well. I mean, I think we want to be able to fund organisations that have kind of traditionally been excluded or faced systemic inequalities, to funding and have faced barriers. So for us, we've said that priority would go to those organisations that are led by you know, Black, Asian and minority ethnic Londoners, LGBTQ+, deaf and disabled Londoners, women, and people from a lower socioeconomic background, because we really know that that is what is missing in the London public realm. But certainly we haven't exclusively funded organisations that are led by those groups. In some cases, some groups may have had an opportunity that other organisations haven't, but they are sharing that opportunity and they are still involving people from those backgrounds in their decision making and shaping the project. So I think that's what's really key for us, is how are people shaping the project and having a say over how their stories are told.
Yeah, and like Anne said, yeah, I'll cover it in my presentation just to stop confusion going away from this fund, but I can cover that as well, no problem.
Okay, brilliant. Are there any more questions at this stage? Or shall I ask Amanda to present on the Building Stronger Communities component?
What's the turnaround time for the application?
For Untold Stories,
yeah.
The deadline is, so you'll need to submit your application by the 5th of October, and then we will hopefully get decisions to you towards the end of January. So that is what, October, 3-ish months.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, and I think I then saw the project start in March, and they've got 12 months to complete. March 24. I think that's what I saw on the slide. So
yeah, and we also say we will send these slides out afterwards.
Yeah, brilliant.
I know you said that you don't want to, sorry, it's Pearl here. I know you don't want to just do murals. So you're open to other things? I mean, like, as I said, we're a musical theatre, but we can tell stories through musical theatre. Is that something that you'd be interested in or not?
I think for us, it's one of the key sort of things is having a kind of a level of permanence within the public realm, because what we're actually trying to challenge is, you know, the statues that have been there for hundreds of years and remain unchanged. So how do we kind of bring more diverse representation to public spaces? So I think there's a note on the website in our frequently asked questions around sort of permanence. So I think if it was kind of a series of events over a year in the public realm, we might be able to fund something like that. But also, you know, really sort of like, how is this telling the story? How is this sort of telling the untold story of perhaps gospel in London or the people affected by it, and kind of the strength of that story coming through, I think.
I was just wondering on that. Is it? I mean, if it's about permanence, I mean, and if you did a series of events and they were documented in some way through film or a publication with photos and a written story written around it, would that then be more likely to be, you know, looked upon favourably? Because I'm just wondering about ways around, you know, if you're going to say, okay, we're going to do this theatre, but okay, as you say, once it's done. But if you've got some kind of record of it that can be put out there through, you know, through the websites and what have you, that does give it a kind of permanence. So would that be something to think about just being innovative about how you might approach it?
Yeah, certainly we have funded a music project that is taking place in, oh gosh, Providence House, which is in Wandsworth, Winstanley and something else estate. And it's an intergenerational heritage exchange kind of music project. But what they're doing sort of in line with a lot of the regeneration that's happening with that estate is they're going to be installing physical markers where people will be able to click with their phone on a QR code that is fixed to some of the buildings permanently, so that they can access some of those performances going on and into the future, and providing a bit of context with it.
Isn't the fact that it is a performing arts school that is delivering musical theatre and heritage make it a permanent fixture? Because it's the intention is for it to be ongoing, and so the community will be invited to become actors, to engage with the program in that way.
I think it's about how it remains kind of available to people within the public realm. So how are people going to continue to access it in the future through the public realm? Again, it's because it's so closely related to the Commission for Diversity in the Public Realm.
Right.
Of those aims of really sort of, being able to have a more sort of permanent memorialization or permanent celebration of those communities that haven't been celebrated in the past.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's really interesting. I think some food for thought there about, you've got an idea and how can you provide a lasting legacy. I think that's what we're looking at here. So maybe some thinking around how that might, maybe having a conversation with the people in Wandsworth to see how they're working on that, to see whether there are lessons to be learned, but maybe something to take forward there. But okay, if there's no more questions, then perhaps Amanda, you'd like to talk about the Building Stronger Communities Fund.
No problem.
Can I see that again?
Yep, we can see it again. Yep. Next slide, and then we're good. That's it. Brill, thank you. So yeah, Building Stronger Communities Fund, and this is also round 2. So pretty much the same as round 1 in that our aims are to support London communities most affected, I guess the most affected or severely affected by COVID-19 pandemic, which enables them to shape their recovery from that. It's really aimed, like Anne said, at kind of equity-led groups, organisations who are potentially far less experienced potentially in applying and or receiving grant funding, to be able to support those community groups that are most in need. I will talk a little bit more about the equity-led part of that, which I know that you mentioned you were talking about just previously. And application, both the application and the monitoring and evaluation process to be, as straightforward and simple as possible for being at the GLA. For applicants and grantees, we've really tried to strip back what's not necessary, to be aware of proportionality, so the size of the grants and what we're asking for, to make it something that's really doable but also for us to gain the impact and the understanding from that impact that we need. And exactly the same as Anne's projects, like she said, projects to be community-led, to show how they'll meet, show how these projects will meet either one or two, depending on the grant type, which I'll go through, of the Mayor's Building Strong Communities mission outcomes. And these are, so one or two of these, the projects will meet. Londoners are supported to shape their communities post-COVID. So, for example, meeting new needs that have emerged by developing community activities and services. Unheard voices are amplified and heard so that communities have influence and control over the decisions. So, for example, people from communities who might be underrepresented in community decision making have opportunities to then have their voices heard and start to shape change. Feelings of belonging become increased, and therefore loneliness and social isolation are decreased. And kind of quite similar to that previous one, feelings of connection within and across communities are increased. So, for example, relationships become strengthened with neighbours and communities. Next slide. So just a quick overview of the grants. Total funding is 915,000. There are three rounds for this fund. So the first round was in December, or it went live in December last year. This round went live on the 13th of June. And then the third round will be announced in January next year. And yeah, so round one projects will be beginning. I'm actually meeting for the first time tomorrow. So they'll be beginning any time. There's no set date, but any time from mid-July this month. And yeah, there'll be the deadline, for this round will be the 8th of August. And for this round, there'll be a mix of micro grants and small grants available, but in the third round, it'll be only micro grants. So this is the last chance for anyone to apply for a small grant in this round. So just going over the two tiers of funding that we have available. So micro grants is funding between £1,000 and £5,000. As I said, those projects can start at any time after the award is finalised, but need to be completed by the end of the 29th of December. So they can last up to 1 year. Those projects need to align with one of the Building Stronger Communities mission outcomes, which I went through on the previous couple of pages ago. And this is available for organisations with a turnover of 50,000 or under, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a couple of slides' time. And then the small grants, these are funding of between £5,001 and £10,000. They can begin again at any time, but they need to be completed by the 28th of June in 2024. So you'll have up to 18 months for those projects. They need to align to up to, so either one or two of the mission outcomes that we went through. And then these are available to organisations or groups with turnover of 200,000 or less. As again, I'll go through that in a moment. In terms of the funding distribution, for round one, we had 365,000 to play around with to award. I think we just went £400 over that. And we're awarding 47 different projects. Which is very exciting. And round two, again, very similar, 350,000. Would expect to fund between 10 and 20 micro grants and between 20 to 30 small grants. But it really depends on, who applies for what type of grant, but that's the main aim. And for round three, as I say, we thought it would be micro grants only, and we've got £200,000 to award. So yeah, probably about 40 to 50 micro grants. So I don't know, over the lifetime of the 2 years, probably about 150 projects is the expectation that we'd be looking to fund. Okay. And in terms of eligibility, really, as we said, it's really targeted at smaller grassroots organisations or groups that will involve the community that have been most negatively affected by COVID-19. And so, yeah, I mentioned it's for annual turnover. For a micro grant, you need to have an annual turnover of between £0 and £50,000, and that's in the last set of financial accounts or financial document or equivalent for a micro grant, and 0 to 200 in the last set of financial accounts or equivalent for a small grant. And just a list here of applicants will need to be one of the following: so registered charity, charitable incorporated organisation, CIC, I don't need to read through all of these, community limited by guarantee, constituted group organisation, exempt or exempted charity, community amateur sports club, and community benefit society. I do have a list of, I thought I wouldn't sort of put it on here, but I do have a list if anyone wants to know any kind of ones that fall outside of that, of those organisations, types of organisations that we can't apply. But for those that we can, all applicant organisations and groups must have at least 2 trustees, directors or management committee members who aren't related, and you need to have a charitable dissolution clause within the governing document. Just to say that on the 12th, yeah, it is the 12th, isn't it? Tuesday the 12th, we can send you out after this, along with the slides. We're putting on a webinar, really. It's not a workshop, it's a webinar, particularly focused for organisations and groups who aren't necessarily very used to filling out application forms. And it's not, the focus isn't how to write a good application form, it's kind of understanding what we're more about what we're asking and why it's important. So for example, you know, why do we need to see a dissolution clause? Why do we need to know that there's 2 directors that are unrelated? And so things like that. So if any of that kind of resonates with you or sounds like it might be useful, please do come along. It's first come, first served. It's the first time we're doing it, and we're doing it on, you know, on some of the I guess things that we noticed for round 1. Okay, so like I mentioned before, all groups or organisations for this round, for round 1 we said they need a majority, but this round must be equity led where possible. Now our definition of this is where at least 75% of the trustees and at least half of the staff members have personal experience of the issues that they're tackling or the communities that their projects are supporting. So yeah, round 1 we have the majority, and round 2 we have slightly amended so that it's all groups must be equity led, but I'll just explain that a little bit. We absolutely still recognise that it's not always possible to be equity led. So yeah, for example, there to support, there might be a project there that's to support a group of toddlers, 2-year-olds who majority can't speak or speak very well. And so within the application, we now ask applicants to state yes or no as to whether their group is equity led by our definition. We've also put not possible there as an option. So if you select that, you'll be prompted to tell us why that's the case for you and how decision makers have relevant skills and experience. So, for example, using that project supporting toddlers, the organisation could consider themselves to be equity-led if the parent or carers of toddlers are represented as trustees and staff members, for example. If it isn't possible for you to be equity-led, but you do provide a clear answer as to why it's not possible and the alternative representation within your organisation, which is appropriate, then that application will absolutely be considered. If that's not made clear, then we won't be able to progress the application. And also number 2, organisations and groups should identify activities that will have a positive change in people's lives during the timeline, and we call that an immediate need. And thirdly, applicants need to be permanently based in London Borough, with a London-based correspondence address. So that means that applicants working with participants from London Borough but aren't permanently based in London, either and or without a London address, would not be able to apply. And organisations can apply for through a sponsor organisations, and you do that if you are a non-constituted organisation. So, you know, we had a lot of mutual aid groups come up during the pandemic who would, you know, probably be quite interested in applying for this. So mutual aid or simply if you're unincorporated, you would need to apply through a registered sponsor that would meet all of our eligibility requirement, except the annual turnover. So that organisation could go have turnover above the 50k and the 200 limits. And also new organisations. Often you might not have the required paperwork by this time. Again, you can apply, or you would need to apply through a registered sponsor organisation. But regardless of that organisation type, that sponsor organisation should be registered with Company House or Charity Commission for England and Wales. They need to be registered in London. They need to have received income in the last year and have 3 trustees or directors or management committees who are unrelated. I've just put together just some quick facts about applying through a sponsorship. So the sponsor organisation will need to know the organisation and the work that your organisation does well. I think we got asked in round 1 if we have a list of organisations that would be required to be sponsors. The answer is no. We want you to go out and source who that would be most appropriate. We'll need to see a list of required documents from the organisation sponsor. Any relevant safeguarding or documents should be from the organisation group running the project. Hopefully that makes sense. If an organisation or group doesn't have liability assurance, they would need to come under the sponsor organisation's insurance policy. We'd ask that the sponsor provides a letter confirming that they're aware of the application and really just happy to hold and receive the grant on the applicant's behalf, because that's who will be signing the funding agreement. The sponsor organisation wouldn't be involved in any of the project delivery, and as I say, they're willing to hold and distribute any funds should you be successful. And equally, the organisation doesn't need to be equity-led either. There are 4 types of application forms available on our website. That's if you're not using an accessible one. So we've got the two types, micro and the small grants, and whether they're constituted group or unconstituted group with a sponsor. So 4 in total. And then just a quick mention, I know Anne's covered this in her presentation, but just to touch on it, community-led projects. We know that loads of communities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, and appreciate that these groups will differ across different parts of London, of course. For this fund, all projects must be community-led. So I've just said it means that the people benefiting or taking part who have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic need to be involved in the design, planning and the delivery. And it can be broken down as activities, just to give a bit more context, I guess, and understanding. Activities designed and led by the community, an organisation where staff or volunteers might be from the local community, and an organisation that has co-designed activities with the local community. Some applications in round 1 weren't able to demonstrate that, so we just thought it would be useful to pop that in. Overall, it's just really important that you provide, as within the application, a clear explanation. I know it sounds obvious, but a clear explanation on exactly which community group or groups that your project will be supporting, and an explanation on specifically how that chosen community has been negatively impacted by the pandemic, or how the pandemic's exacerbated any deep-rooted issues. And again, that wasn't always made clear during the first round. So we know that everyone's been affected in some way, but especially how has your target community been impacted more so. So we know that community needs across the capital are varied here. So we expect and for sure hope to receive applications from quite a broad range of projects. So it might be intergenerational celebrations, festivals, particularly maybe for the smaller micro grants, storytelling, cultural, working with children, young people, supporting a particular mental health need within one community, etc., etc. The list goes on. As for round 1, we understand that some kind of guidance is useful when thinking about how to shape your proposal, and we haven't been able to, because we're in the process of still doing due diligence and funding agreements, we're not able to apply to announce round 1 projects yet. So Just to give you an idea, these are some examples, and they're just ones that I've made up, of project headlines that would meet one of the 4 Building Stronger Communities outcomes. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to read over these. I won't read them all out. I'll give you sort of 20 seconds. Maybe I'll just focus on one. You know, you might have a weekly mental health support group for young people who are now experiencing anxiety about their futures due to unfavourable labour market conditions, which was from the pandemic. And so really linking the community group and how they've been impacted. And in terms of whether it needs to be, activities need to be new, we believe that if something is already working and it's clearly having impact, then those activities will surely be considered for funding. Projects can fall into the categories of either new, more, slightly different, or repeating. If it's not new, it's just really vital to be really clear about the added value that this funding will bring. And we've done a breakdown in the frequently asked, and actually in the guidance, of what we might mean more about those different options. And again, like Andy, just thought it'd be useful to touch on the assessment criteria which we consider when reviewing applications. So we look at the strength of the project idea and how much of a good fit it is to the fund. How involved the target community, benefiting community has been involved and will be involved, the impact of the project for those taking part, and if it appears to be good value for money, how accessibility to the project has been considered and really factored into the budget as well. And by accessibility, we mean how you include everyone in the community group so that they can take part in your project in the best way possible. So essentially, we want to know how you ensure that everyone's access needs, which is the name that we use for arrangements for equipment. Arrangements or equipment are met so that no one in that target group is excluded really from either delivering or participating. And we do ask that applicants include a budget line to show any accessibility costs where appropriate. So for example, it might be translating something into different languages used in that community, or having a British Sign Language person coming in, BSL person coming in to do an event for you. And we look at whether appropriate project risks have been well considered, along with obviously clear actions to mitigate or lessen those risks. Whether the organisation appears to have appropriate capacity to manage the proposed project. So again, with round one, we didn't always get a clear picture of it, wasn't explicitly said, you know, who will be managing and what their experience is. So it's always quite useful to know that. And whether the organisation is equity led. If an organisation has been funded by the GLA within the last 3 years, or whose funding has been received by the GLA is less than 50k or under. Organisations, that's just something that we want to be funding organisations who haven't been funded recently or not so much. But it doesn't mean to say that anyone's excluded. It just means that that's part of our additional set of criteria really. So more things within that is ensuring, we want to ensure a geographical. So basically, yeah, I've said here, if we get to a panel and we have applicants who score very similarly and we're really struggling to make a decision, we come down to this almost like reserve criteria where we look at, you know, what's the spread of geographical spread applications across the London, project themes. So we want to be awarding projects with arts and culture, children and young people, food and mental health and wellbeing particularly. We consider if there's projects with a greening angle, and also those projects, as I say, it's not essential, but those that are involving volunteering to really increase participating. Did you want to do this one, or do you want me to? I don't mind either way.
Yeah, I can do this one, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, we just wanted to sort of give you an idea of the kind of things that we're looking for you to tell us in an application form. partly because I think, you know, I used to do funding applications quite a lot, and it's really easy to forget when you're sat in front of a computer in an application form that you're actually talking to other human beings, to other people who care a lot about this kind of thing, who care about communities. So really what we want to get in the application is a real sense of who you are and who you represent and what matters to you and your community. So some of the things that you should tell us within the application form is, you know, who you are and who you represent. So how do you make your decisions? Who is involved in your regular activities? How do you generally just talk to your community? Then we want to know what you want to do and why. So what's the big vision for the project? Where do you want to get to by the end of the project? And why is this really important to your community? Why does it matter to them? Then you need to tell us about the activities you're planning to help you achieve that big vision. If it's workshops, or if it's setting up a support group, those activities that are going to help you do that activity, and how you know that they're the best activities to help you achieve that vision. Particularly for Untold Stories, we want to know who or what will be represented. So thinking about what stories you're telling within the public realm about your community or people who've lived in your area previously. And then, as I think we've both said already, is really how you have involved your community in planning this project. And that can look like different things for different organisations, depending on how you talk to your community. It might be that actually you've been talking about this project for months. You just need to get some funding together. It might be that you've done some specific kind of outreach or consultation with the community. But what we really want to know is how what you've heard has shaped the project that you're presenting in your application. And then also how you plan to keep involving your community in the project. It might be that they will become volunteers, that they will co-create an artwork, or you might form a local steering group. Then, and this is particular to Untold Stories, is how will other people feel about your project? We know that people feel really strongly about the public realm and what is represented there. So how have you considered a real diversity of views within that? Is important to us. It's also useful for us to understand what your future plans are as an organisation and how this project will help you get there. If it's setting up some kind of volunteering or support project, you know, once that's established with our funding, how are you going to make it more sustainable in the future, and things like that. And then also your skills and experience. And as I say, this might be a completely new project for you as an organisation, but you may have volunteers or partners or networks supporting you in certain areas that do have a wealth of experience. So tell us about that so that we can see that you're really sort of considering this project from being well managed and influenced by local people. Then we just wanted to say that there is support available to help you if you've got particular access needs, to help you understand the grants and apply. The support is done slightly differently for both funds. For Untold Stories, we have a budget to help you get in the relevant support to help you apply for the grants. So whether that's that you need a note taker, you might need a BSL interpreter to help you put the application together. You just need to tell us what support you need, and we can cover the costs of that. And then we're also working with inclusion partners who will, and Amanda can talk on the next slide about this, who can support certain community groups with their applications as well. And then we've also got the application materials available in BSL video and also Easy Read. Amanda, do you want to talk through this one? You're on mute.
Sorry.
Yes, first of all, if you've got any additional needs and, you know, the standard application or the the Easy Read and BSL aren't accessible to you, we ask you to contact Rocket Science, our grant management organisation, and they can arrange a video call to discuss your accessibility needs, so that's not a problem. But if you require support for this application and you're from one of the listed organisations types below, our inclusion partners would be really happy to speak with you. So support might be, for example, that English isn't your first language, or that you haven't applied for a fund like this before, or any fund before. You want to discuss a project idea, or you've got a question about criteria. That's actually fun. That's all fine. So yeah, we've got applicants from Deaf and Disabled People's Organisation, Inclusion London. If you're an applicant from LGBTQIQA plus group consortium, we have UBELE are there to support applicants from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups, and Women's Resource Centre are there to support applicants from women-centred groups. We know that you might go across more than one, but if you could just choose the one that speaks most to you, I suppose, they would be more than happy to speak with you. All of these partners are having their own, or some have had already, but information and support sessions as well. So do contact the one that speaks to your organisation the most, and get yourself booked on if appropriate. Yeah, that's probably all I need to say on there. And then in terms of other support, I think this is the same for you, is it, Anne? That you can contact Rocket Science on the number or email provided there. I'm not sure about, I'll check with you in a minute, but for Building Strong Communities, you can book a 20-minute support call, which is for any Tuesday during the application period. And Rocket Science just say, ask you to come prepared with specific questions about your application, having read the guidance and the frequently asked questions. They can't help you necessarily refine an idea, but can help with guidance on the remit of the fund, and help with any questions or technical questions that you might have about submitting the form or your project. Yeah, and
yeah, so from September, we will have some 15-minute consultations that people can book to talk to a member of our team about their applications as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I think I know that Anne's got some other sources of funding and resources at the end to share with you, but I'm aware that I haven't given any space for questions yet for Building Strong Communities. Sorry, I totally skipped that bit. But yeah, maybe if you want to just finish these last two slides, and then we can sort of have any questions from Building Strong Communities, or if there's any others from Untold Stories.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a list of links of other funders that work in this area. Steve is probably well aware of all of them, and we'll send the links will obviously be in the slides that we send out later. And again, I realise that links are not much use to you in a presentation, but when we send it out, we will have those afterwards. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we can take any questions. Yep.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anne and Amanda. Are there any other questions for either of the funding rounds anyone would like to ask at this stage?
Yeah, it's perfect. The last one, the presentation that just went ahead, and unless I missed it, when would we, if we were successful, when would we actually get the money to start the project?
It's a good question. It would be, we'd look for projects to start from December. Okay. So you would get the money, I'm trying to think when decisions would be made. I do know this. Let me just check. A moment. Yeah, you'd be notified, the week beginning the 14th of November. And the projects, it is the 12th of December. Projects could start from that time. So it'll be, between after the 14th of December, between mid-November and mid-December.
Awesome, thank you.
No worries.
I was just going to ask on the Building Stronger Communities, and it's about the impact of COVID. I'm aware from a lot of the engagement that I'm having is that organizations or groups that had a lot of face-to-face and physical contact and couldn't really do that in other ways are the ones who suffered financially and through losing some of their beneficiaries just through lack of contact. So I think there may be projects that people might come forward with, say, actually, this is about restoring our financial position because we lost a lot of income, just to get us back to where we were in 2019, to re-engage with those people who we've lost contact with. If they fit the criteria around having the numbers in management and on their board, and they are asking people what they want, is that potentially a type of project? It's nothing innovative, nothing new, it works, but it's just that over the last couple of years, because of the circumstances, people have just lost contacts. They need to sort of do some kind of marketing strategy to make people aware that they're back and up and running again, and they may have lost, you know, they may not be able to fund the sort of spaces that they might have hired because of lack of finance. So is potentially that a project that might work?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, so long as they're really clear about who that community is, and how they've particularly been impacted by the pandemic. But you know, as I said, all projects need to meet one or two of those four outcome criteria. So it might be, from what you're saying, you know, that you're looking at feelings of belonging are increased. So because you know, people are feeling more isolated, and so you want to do something about that. And a way to do that is to bring people together in person again, and all the rest of it. So yeah, potentially, but yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Any other questions for Anne or Amanda? It doesn't seem like it. Okay, well, we've had about an hour, so I think it's probably a good time if there are no other questions. As I say, we've been recording this session, so we will be putting it up on our website, so it'll be there for people to, and we'll publicize that. Obviously, there's an awful lot of support that GLA and your partners are providing. As always, you know, if people want to bounce ideas off of us, especially around need and evidence, because we're aware there will, you know, different boroughs will have different data sets and information regarding their own sort of borough circumstances. So if you want to ask about need and evidence, then again, come and talk to us. We might have something we can steer you towards. And obviously we'll be getting the slides following this, which we can send out to everybody. So if there is nothing else, so thank you very much, Anne and Amanda, for coming along and giving your time to us this morning. And thanks again for everyone on the call and for your questions. I hope it's been helpful.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And just as a reminder, like the guidance and FAQs, and you know, we couldn't cover it all today, just kind of the main things. But if you want to look in a bit more detail, we encourage you just before you apply to have a look at those on the webpage.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody.
Awesome.
And I will close the meeting down now.
All right.
So have a good day.
Take care.
Okay, cheerio. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Thanks, bye.